Enough of the off the field distractions. I'm going to give you my official record prediction for Deion Sanders and Colorado in 2024.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We are also brought to you by the Locked On. We all love free things, and that's why we love the Locked On Podcast Network so much. Today's episode, it is my official record prediction episode. So I already went through my record prediction before. I kind of went game by game, did like an early sort of everything being settled sort of prediction. And now with the college football season it's August 8th, Colorado plays in 21 days. So 3 weeks around there. Colorado's has their first game against North Dakota State. And so I want everyone to know my prediction, have it on record. So that way, if I absolutely crush, we could all credit me. Or if I absolutely fail, you could all throw it in my face. Either way, I will appreciate the sort of going back to this moment right here and seeing just how well I did. I think it's worth noting, according to our sponsors over at FanDuel, Colorado's win total is set at 5.5. So, if you are confident in that Colorado is going to surpass that mark, bet the over. That's you saying that they're going to win 6 or more games. And if you're not confident, you'd bet the under, which is them winning 5 or less games, which is actually the most common bet in college football right now, according to BetMGM. So what does that tell me? Well, one, you kind of always have to fade the general population. So if the general population is saying, hey, this is going to happen for sure, like everyone's saying, Colorado, bet the under. They're not going to do it. They're gonna surpass it. So I will say I think they're going to reach the over. When they reach the over, I don't know, but I'm going to go game by game, tell you win or loss, give you a quick little tidbit why I think they win or lose that game, and then we're just going to dive into it. Couple of reasons I think Colorado will be better. First of all, I think they upgraded the roster, right? I think they improved the offensive line dramatically. Last year, it was atrocious. They gave up over 50 sacks. If this group can sort of keep Shedeur Sanders in that 20 to 30 range, which is still a lot, but it's 30 less than last year, right? Just imagine Shedeur Sanders with 30 more plays last season, where Colorado was a victim of 3 or 4 one-score losses, and you put those the other way, and all of a sudden they're 8-4, and we're talking about this team much differently. A little fun fact to know about the Big 12, and I think this could work in Colorado's favor this year. From 2018 to 2023, no conference has had more games decided by one-score games. 46.5% of the Big 12's games were decided by one score. Last year, they didn't go in Colorado's favor. This year, I think they might. So let's get into it. I'm going to go game by game, give you why I think they're going to win. And at the end of it, we're just going to analyze it all together. So week 1, Thursday, August 29th, they welcome the North Dakota State Bison to Boulder, which I think was a horrendous scheduling mistake. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Not the game that you want to open with. You want to open with the Citadel. You want to open with an FCS program that should give you no trouble. Not an FCS program that wins titles like seemingly every other year. Colorado's favored in this one by 8.5 points. That's the spread. 8.5. Over under set at 59.5. So they obviously expect this to be somewhat of a high scoring game. I think Colorado wins. I think Colorado covers. I think realistically, North Dakota State, new head coach, lose some key guys here and there. Colorado is much more talented. And I think Deion Sanders will do a great job of really emphasizing how good North Dakota State is to this team. So that way they're not like, oh, it's just an FCS program. No, this is not just any FCS program. This FCS program will punch you in the mouth, take your lunch money, and then laugh at you. So that's the sort of energy that Colorado needs to come into week 1 with. I think they win that game, starting off 1-0 for the second year in a row under Deion Sanders. Week 2, in what will be a primetime game on NBC. The other week 1 will be a primetime game on ESPN, 8 p.m. Eastern. Week 2, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. They're playing at Nebraska. Nebraska's the favorite here. 6.5 is the line according to ESPN. Last year, Colorado beat the brakes off of them. biggest difference between this year and last year. Nebraska has a competent quarterback, right? They had Jeff Sims last year, who I think realistically, I don't know if I don't think he's ever made sort of taking the next steps that he's needed to at quarterback. Jeff Sims is now at his third school of his career. He's at Arizona State. So Colorado might see him again eventually. I don't think they play Arizona State this year. No, they don't. So they won't see Jeff Sims ever again. But they have to sort of shut down Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola is kind of like the next, I think everyone compares him to Patrick Mahomes. He has the faux hawk. He has the sort of stocky build. And he's kind of got that off-platform throw. He's got a big arm. And so Dylan Raiola is kind of viewed as like the Patrick Mahomes light. Now, I think Colorado wins this game. I think Nebraska's defense is going to be really tough. It's going to push Colorado, but Colorado had no issues with them last year, and their defense was solid last year. So I know they're one of the better defenses this year, but I think it comes down to which quarterback do I trust more? I personally trust, Shedeur Sanders more. He's more experienced. He's more proven. He's going to be coming off, I think, a week 1 game against North Dakota State, I think that's a bigger test than Dylan Raiola's test against UTEP. I just think it is. I think if this game was later in the season and Dylan Raiola had his sea legs under him, it could be a little bit different. But I do think that Colorado gets the tough win over in Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. Then they stay on the road, week 3, Colorado State. This game was way too close for comfort last year. I kind of think, depending on how Colorado does against Colorado State this year, we should be able to tell somewhat how good this team is, right? Like if Colorado State pushes them to the brink or beats them, or Colorado needs overtime again to beat them, it's like, oh, did Colorado really take another step? Or like I don't think Colorado State's projected to be that good in the Mountain West. Like I think we're looking at a middle of the pack team in the Mountain West. Like I'm looking at the preseason polls right now. I pulled them up so that way I could kind of give you guys a gauge of where people view the Mountain West. It goes Boise State 1, UNLV 2, Fresno State 3, Air Force 4, Colorado State 5. So Colorado State's not even the second best team in their own state. The Air Force is better than them according to the preseason poll. Now, obviously, that's not like a metric to go off of, but I think this game is going to be way more personal than last year. I think there's going to be some sort of comment made by Jay Norvell. I think there's going to be some sort of comment made by his family. Plus, Deion Sanders, he's got the brain of an elephant, right? He doesn't forget. I think he remembers what Jay Norvell said about him, kind of what he said about how he was raised, which Deion Sanders took to be about Mama Prime, which you can't be talking about Mama Prime like that and how she raised him. Colorado's favored by 8.5. I think that's a blowout game. I think this is kind of a statement game here for Colorado. I really do. So now I have them at 3-0 again, second year in a row. This time, though, for homecoming, they welcome Baylor to town. Baylor's going to be a lot different than last year. They have a quarterback in DeQuan Finn, who is a do-it-all type of guy. I think he's going to be a lot better than what Baylor had last year at quarterback. But it's homecoming. It's Colorado's first. Well, it's their first game of this new Big 12. It's their first game of this Big 12 era. They were already in the Big 12, but obviously they left in 2011 for the Pac-12. I think they beat Baylor. There's currently no spread on this one, but you look at how Baylor finished the year and lost to Iowa State by double digits. They lose to Houston, who first year in the Big 12 last year, not really the best team. They get blown out by Kansas State, blown out by TCU, who Colorado beat, and then they lose a close one to West Virginia. Obviously, it's a very different team, and Colorado lost their last 5. But I think Colorado made much more improvements than Baylor. Baylor's defense is probably going to be stout, but is DeQuan Finn good enough to sort of lead them to a victory over Shedeur Sanders and company? I don't think so. I don't think so just yet. We'll have to wait and see. Then Colorado hits the road for the third time in 4 weeks. They go to UCF. This is where I think Colorado suffers their first loss of the season. UCF is a tough team to beat at the Bounce House. That's what their stadium's called. They're 82-26, which is a 76% win record. They're 4-0 in conference championship games at the stadium, or just in general. So UCF, and they've had 5 undefeated seasons at home since 2014. So You beating UCF on the road, it's tough. I think this is sort of a game that Coach Prime probably has circled because it's in Florida, so it's in front of a lot of Florida recruits. But UCF, and this is kind of giving like one specific reason for each game. I think their back, I almost said their backcourt, their backfield of KJ Jefferson and RJ Harvey. I think it's going to be tough for not just Colorado to stop, but every team to stop. They have a dynamic quarterback, running back tandem back there. I think it gets a little dicey. I think Colorado drops their first game of the season. So now I have them sitting at 4-1, kind of how last year went. Or no, this is still better than last year, right? Last year they started off 3-0, lost their next 2 games, then they beat Arizona State, then they didn't win again. So they go to UCF. I think they lose that game. Then they have the bye week. Then they play Kansas State. I think Kansas State realistically is going to be playing for a Big 12 title when things are all said and done. I think it's gonna be them in Utah. I think Colorado loses to Kansas State. I think Dylan Edwards and Avery Johnson and the other running back they have, his name's slipping my mind right now. I think they could sort of form like a really tough trio for Colorado to stop. I think they're going to attack Colorado on the ground. And then Kansas State's defense, stout, always is. And I think they're going to get the best of Colorado at Arizona. Colorado almost beat them last year, but on the road here, I don't like Colorado on the road this year just yet. I need to see them play on the road, but I already have them winning 2 road games. And realistically, it's hard for a team to replicate success on the road. So I have them losing 3 straight here. They lose to Arizona. So now they're sitting at 4-3. And it's a little bit like last year where it's like, oh gosh, here we go again. What the hell? What the hell is going on? Right? They get Cincinnati. Cincinnati comes to town. I think Cincinnati is going to be the worst team in the Big 12. Realistically, I think Arizona State's going to be second worst, or Houston, then Arizona State, something like that. I think Cincinnati is going to struggle against Colorado. Colorado just has a far better roster. I think they're going to bounce back. Unlike last year, they were unable to sort of bounce back from adversity. I think they bounce back here, and now they're sitting at 5-3, 1 game away from making a bowl game for what would be the first time in quite some time for Colorado. They made a bowl game, and I think it was 2020. They made the Alamo Bowl, and they lost to Texas there. So I think Colorado gets their victory to send them to a bowl game here. Then they go to Texas Tech. I know I said I didn't like them at Arizona, but I personally like what Arizona's offense looks like better. No Fafita, Tetrell McMillan. They added some other talent in the portal. I like Arizona better. Texas Tech, on the other hand, we talked about it with the Locked on Texas Tech guys. Or I talked about it with the Locked on Texas Tech guys. Texas Tech just didn't live up to expectations last year. And I don't trust their quarterback at all. I think their quarterback situation is probably one of the more underwhelming ones in the Big 12, and I don't think their defense is going to be that good. So I have Colorado winning on the road here. So now Colorado's sitting at 6-3 and loving where we're at. You're 6-3, 3 games remaining in the season. You're probably second or third in the Big 12 based on how other teams did. They have Utah coming to town. I think Utah has a legitimate shot at going undefeated. I really do. They have the defense. They have the quarterback. They have everything. They're the most complete team in the Big 12, and I think Colorado loses to them. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh. Sorry about that. Mic issues. I was going to say, I know people are going to almost beat them last year with a backup quarterback, which is true. But it's also worth noting that Utah was one of the most injured teams in college football last year, and they beat Colorado with a walk-on quarterback who had never taken a snap at the D1 level. So last year's game doesn't matter. Like, just throw that out the window, does not matter. Then next week, so I have them sitting, that's loss number 1, 2, 3. That's loss number 4 on the year. So they're 6-4, which is still really good. You're still going bowling. And then they go to Kansas, kind of. They're going to play them at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. I don't trust Jalen Daniels to stay healthy enough all year. I know a lot of people are going to be like, how is Cam Rising going to stay healthy long enough for a year? Cam Rising has injury problems, but for whatever reason, they're always in the bowl game. Not that this is it's a guarantee, but both times Cam Rising got injured, it was during their bowl game. So he made it through the entirety of the regular season, then gets injured at the end of the year. So Jalen Daniels has played 4 seasons at Kansas, and I think he played around the same or less games than Cam Rising has in 2 years at Utah. So don't trust Jalen Daniels. I don't think this Kansas team is going to be the same, because last year what made them special, I think, was Jalen Daniels goes out and they bring in Jason Bean at quarterback, and Jason Bean was as fast as they come, an elite athlete. And I think now he's playing in the UFL or whatever the hybrid XFL league is. And then to finish out the year, so I now have Colorado sitting at 7-4, which is pretty good, right? I think by this point, you're probably still somewhat in contention for the Big 12 title. You probably need a few things here or there to come to fall your way. I think they lose to Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State's rushing attack is going to be tough for Colorado. If Ollie Gordon's healthy, I think Oklahoma State's going to be a tough game for Colorado to win. So I have them going 7-5, making a bowl game, and I think that's a great year. You guys comment below, what record prediction do you have for Colorado? Which games do you think they're going to lose? Which games do you disagree with in my projection the most? And we could discuss in the comments. When we come back, although I said they could go 7-5, I don't think that's the best case scenario. I think the best case scenario for Colorado is around 9-3, 10-2, and I'll tell you why when we come back. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Game Time. Let me tell you about Game Time. It's an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, which are great. That's how me and my girlfriend the other day picked out our seats for the Braves game. We wanted to sit behind home plate, not too close, not too far. We were right in the middle. Great seats and a great deal. It was a fantastic deal. And we had a blast. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So you could take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time if you download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you guys for tuning in. Let's talk about best case scenarios, right? I just went through game by game record projection, for Colorado. I have them going 7-5. I have them starting off 4-0, losing 3 straight, winning a couple here and there, and then splitting the difference. That final month on their schedule does not do them any favors. Realistically, they're going to play 4 of the top 5 to conclude the season, which, I mean, depending on how good Colorado is, will either be tough or it'll be whatever. So, excuse me, I had to get a little sip there. Second segment sip, as Spencer McLaughlin always says. I think Colorado has a chance to surprise people, though. And what the difference between this, my best case scenario, and my record projection is, my best case scenario is everything goes right. So Colorado stays healthy. Colorado is good, really good in the trenches, both sides. They're able to protect Shador. They're able to establish the run. They're able to stop the run. They're able to pressure the quarterback. That's what the best case scenario is. They also are on the right end. They get a little lucky sometimes of these one-score games. That's another factor. Like it's one of those things I talked about it. 47% of the games, roughly 47%, are one-score games. So Colorado in the Big 12 may have a few close games that just don't go their way. And in this scenario, I think they go their way. So best case scenario for Colorado, I think they go 9-3. Like this is like peak, like they did everything they needed to do. They just lost a couple games here and there. I think the 3 losses that I would probably circle no matter what for Colorado this year are Kansas State, Utah, and then Oklahoma State. Those are the 3 where I think Colorado will have the biggest challenges. They're physical, they can run the ball, and obviously they're good teams. Like I'm sorry, like it's hard. Those are the teams that are going to be duking it out for the Big 12 championship. So those are the teams that will sort of be, I don't know, in the mix to be the playoff representative for the Big 12. So best case scenario though, how do we get to 9 wins? One, I think if Colorado is in that 9-win realm, Travis Hunter's healthy. Shador Sanders is a Heisman finalist or Heisman candidate. I talked about what he needs. It's about 4,000 passing yards, about 40 touchdowns throwing, or if he's going to rush for about 15, that also works too. And you have to be contending or playing for a conference title. That's where Colorado would be. Now, that means the defense is much more disciplined than they were last year. They had a lot of nonsensical penalties. They were illegal substitution, unnecessary roughness, holding, whatever it was. So Robert Livingston's crew gets things going. Warren Sapp has that defensive line looking tenacious. The offensive line, Phil Loadhall, figures out his group, and that group is good. If Colorado's offensive line is average, they'll win 7 to 8 games. If they're good to really good, they can win 9 to 10 games. I think the offensive line probably cost them 3-ish, 4 games last year by themselves. Like, we'll just call it, we'll say how it is, right? So that's what I think the best case scenario is. If Colorado goes 9-3, I think in this Big 12, that might be good enough for second place, which means you might be playing for a Big 12 title, which means you might be playing for, if you win the Big 12 title, you could get into the playoff. So Colorado at their very best, which is offense is clicking, defense is clicking, health, improvement everywhere. They have a good run game, right? They didn't have one last year. They didn't have a good defense last year. They weren't balanced on offense. They weren't good on defense. That's just how it goes, or that's just how it went. If all those things are fixed, Deion Sanders and company will be shocking some people. Now, when we come back, I'm going to talk to you about what I think the worst case scenario could be, and that's just based off of kind of like the opposite. So like things go wrong and it just doesn't go to plan. But first, a quick little break. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in and making me your first listen of the day. Like I said, free and available wherever you get your podcast. If you need a second listen, please go check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay. I talked about the best case scenario. I gave you my record projection 7-5. I just feel like they have some tough games. Their schedule doesn't do them any favors at the end there. Best case scenario, I think they go 9-3 in the regular season and they're competing for a Big 12 title. And that's a great year. If you go from 4 wins to 9 wins, oh my gosh, Deion Sanders will have no problem recruiting. I think all of the doubts about him having interest in building up Colorado will disappear. And I think the only worry that people would have is, hey, other people are going to start coming for Coach Prime now, right? Like they're going to be like, he could do it. He could coach at the Power 5 or Power 4 level, So now we want him. So that would be the only worry. But I do think that is the best case scenario for Colorado is that they're in a situation where they're winning games, right? Worst case scenario. So this is like, and let me preface this by saying this isn't me saying this is going to happen. This is me saying Colorado falls on their face and we're sitting there at the end of the year going, oh, wow, that was a cluster. That was a disaster. So I look at their first 3 games, right? I think worst case scenario, Colorado is 0-3 to start the year. It's not great. It's not something that I would even want to fathom. North Dakota State, though, very physical. They beat Power 5 teams all the time. Like people don't get that. Like I'm going to pull up their record right now and I want you guys to sort of just take this into like soak it in because I don't think people really understand how good they can be. Like they are a team that has beaten they've beaten up really good teams. Like right here. So I have their record pulled up. North Dakota State won 6 straight games against FBS teams since 2016. And this was put out in 2023. So I'm not sure if they played one last year, but that's just how they were. Like they were that good. So they had won 6 straight games against FBS teams since 2010. Their streak started with a 6-3 win at Kansas. Obviously, Kansas. It was in 2010, so Kansas was terrible. They beat Minnesota 37-24 in 2011. They beat Colorado State 22-7 in 2012. They beat Kansas State in 2013, Iowa State in 2014, number 13 Iowa in 2016, and all of these games were on the road. So that is crazy to me. And you just sort of look at what they've done every single year. Like I'm just going to pull up the record now, record by year. And you kind of just have to you have to admire what they've done. Like they do this. Like last year was their worst season in I don't even know, since 2010, I guess you could say, and they went 11-4. They went 11-4. They lost the FCS semifinal. The year prior, they lost in the championship game. They were 12-3. The year before, they were the champions, 14-1. The year before that, they were 7-3 during the COVID year, lost in the quarterfinal. 16-0 the year before that, 15-0 the year before that, 14-1, 12-2, 13-2, 15-1. So North Dakota State is not a program to sleep on. Nebraska, I don't think I'm very high on Dylan Raiola early in the season. I think he will be really good eventually, and I think he will be one of the better quarterbacks in college football when things are all said and done. But is he going to be ready to win a rivalry game that soon? I don't think so. But let's pretend he is. Colorado or Nebraska has a really good defense, and let's just say he's like Trevor Lawrence, Dylan Raiola, where he just steps in, makes big throws all the time. Colorado lose that game. At Colorado State pushed them to the brink last year. They just torched the defense. They found a weakness, and they just went after it. So now Colorado's sitting at 0-3 in my worst case scenario. I think they beat Baylor kind of regardless. UCF, tough game. I think they could lose that game. UCF doesn't lose very often at home. So now they're sitting at 1-4 to start the year. Then you play Kansas and Arizona. In this case, I think they lose to Kansas State. If this is worst case scenario, I think they could beat Arizona and Cincinnati to get them to 3 wins. And then let's say they win one game, their final 4 games, 4-8 again would be tough, right? I don't know what the discourse around Colorado going 4-8 would be. Again, this isn't me saying this is going to happen. This is just like my worst case scenario. 4-8 in year 2 would be very tough, especially when you have possibly 2 top 10, top 5 picks on the team and you've improved the roster everywhere, because then at that point, I think it comes down to coaching. So that is my record prediction, my best case scenario, and my worst case scenario for Colorado in 2024. Comment below which one you think is most likely to happen. And I appreciate all the support that you guys give me. This has been another episode of Locked on Buffs.